few summers ago, I was rushing to catch a flight, so I called an Uber to the airport, just like so many times before. Little did I know, this ride would change me forever. The car rolled up, and instantly I noticed its bumper sticker. It had this black and white American flag with a thin blue line running through it. Then I saw the driver's baseball cap. It had that same flag right on the front. I actually didn't know too much about that flag back then, and I've learned a lot since. But at the time, something inside me was having a visceral reaction to its symbol. It felt like a direct threat to my values. This wasn't long after George Floyd. Many of us had raised our voices against racism and police violence. For me, this flag wasn't just pro-police. It conjured up associations with the extreme right, even white nationalism, which brought up my own fears of rising anti-Semitism. I couldn't believe I was about to get stuck in this guy's car for the next 45 minutes. I'm thinking, what if he starts talking crazy? Or worse, acting crazy? I should probably just cancel this car and order a new one. Then I asked myself, what would any other self-respecting, mildly paranoid workaholic do in this situation? So I got in the car. Then I opened up my laptop and I looked down and I dove right into my emails. And I hoped he would get that hint. Now, maybe that flag wouldn't trigger the same reactions in you. And maybe you've never found yourself trapped in a car with someone whose views might be abhorrent to you. But I bet you've had your share of moments with someone who seems totally unreasonable, or offensive, or just way out of line. I call these moments curiosity killers. When they happen, we're certain we're in the right, and they're in the wrong. Maybe we want to teach them a thing or two, and there's absolutely nothing to learn from them. Now, if there's a situation where nothing's being learned, I tend to go after it, kind of like a dog with a bone. Because I believe missed learning opportunities cost us way more than we realize. And conversely, when people get the chance to learn, I mean really learn, incredible worlds of possibility open up. That's why I've dedicated my career to expanding and improving learning, wherever it matters most. I've worked with startups and Fortune 100 companies, school systems, and global NGOs, and across all those contexts, no matter where in the world, whether I'm the leader or a board member or an advisor, I've been fascinated by how often we fail to learn vital things from other people right around us. And I've been even more obsessed with how to solve this problem. So I've researched it, taught about it, even wrote a book about asking better questions. And the first step is getting more curious. But I will confess to you, I'm entirely not curious, way more often than I would like to admit. Like at work, for example, if it just seems like someone's not being a team player. Or at home, when we can't get our teenagers to take out the damn trash. And let's not even start on politics or social media. I can jump to, what's wrong with these people? Just as fast as any of us can. But back to you. Can you think of a time when your curiosity was at zero? Maybe you felt righteous, maybe judgmental. Don't say it out loud. Just try to recall an interaction where you felt anything but curious. You got one? Now, you may be thinking, who cares that I wasn't curious? They were wrong. But think about this. When our curiosity closes down, we stop asking questions. And when we don't ask questions, we don't find out really important stuff. Like take, for example, the software business leader who rides her team hard to launch a product. She's so sure it has to ship next week that she rolls right over their concerns about its readiness. I'm sure you can predict how that story ends, and it's painful for everyone involved. And that kind of thing happens all the time, and not just in the workplace. Think about the single dad whose son starts acting out, so he comes down hard on him with strong discipline. But if he had been just a little curious, he would have discovered that his boy was being bullied at school, and the bad behavior was a cry for help and for protection. Mark Twain knew just how prevalent this problem is when he warned us. What gets us into trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. But even more than missing out on critical information that's right under our noses, when our curiosity shuts down, it undermines our relationships. Because curiosity is how we connect. There's this strange paradox. Right when our convictions or our relationships feel threatened, we lose the one thing that would help us, curiosity. So why does it vanish right when we need it most? I got insight on this puzzle early in my career from a mentor named Chris Argyris. As a Harvard professor, he studied what's really happening when people aren't learning from each other. And it starts like this. Anytime we walk into a situation, we're awash in information. Like right now, you're focused on me up here, hopefully. But zoom out for a second. Notice all the other stuff going on in this room that was outside your awareness. The feeling of your chair, the sound of people shifting around you, the equipment in here. You could count hundreds, maybe thousands of things. And if you tried to pay attention to all of those things, you would be paralyzed. You ever walk down the street with a 3-year-old? They do stop and notice everything. The ant, the leaf, the crack in the sidewalk. It's adorable, but you don't get anywhere. So our brains have to make choices about what tiny slice of information to focus in on. And side note, it's usually what confirms our pre-existing beliefs or fears. And everything else fades away. And because this happens in split seconds and outside of our awareness, we forget that we've just chosen to ignore 99% of reality. We perceive that that one thing our brain latched onto is the full reality. Like back in that Uber ride, there was plenty I didn't focus on or even notice. At that time, I couldn't tell you what was playing on the car radio, whether the driver had pictures of his kids on the dashboard, or even, I'm embarrassed to say, his name. My brain selected one thing, that flag. And for me, that was everything. And once we select that one thing, we're not content to just sit with it. We assign meaning to it instantly. My brain made that flag mean, this guy doesn't value the lives of anyone but the police. And from there, our brains fill out the rest of the story, again in milliseconds, again in ways that reinforce our prior worldviews. So what was my story? My story became, this driver must be against everything I stand for. He's probably racist, maybe white nationalist. People like him can't be reasoned with. I might not be safe. Yeah, I told you I was a little paranoid, right? But I don't think I'm alone in spinning stories like this. And when our stories turn other people into threats, our lizard brain rings the danger alarm, which sends us right into fight, flight, or freeze mode. In the back of that Uber, my reaction was flight, right into my inbox, and out went my curiosity. But as human beings, we have more than lizard brains. We have another option, beyond fight or flight or freeze. It also starts with the letter F, finding out. Viktor Frankl called the ability to choose one's response to one's circumstances the last of the human freedoms. When we seek to find out more, we're choosing curiosity. And yeah, I get it. Choosing curiosity is not the obvious move to make when our story says the other person's mad or bad, and our culture discourages us from focusing on what we might not know. But still, it's possible. And it starts by recognizing that the story we've constructed about someone was based on those automatic steps our brain took in split seconds, built on that tiny fragment of information we selected while ignoring almost everything else. So I'm not saying your story is wrong, but it's more incomplete than you probably realize. Choosing curiosity means injecting little question marks inside your otherwise certain story to make room for what you might be missing. And we can do that by asking ourselves what I call curiosity sparks. So here's just a few of my favorites to try when someone else seems like the problem. 1, what might I be missing? There's so much that we're missing and not aware of, including, for example, all the challenges and struggles the other person might be dealing with and not telling us about. 2, how else might someone interpret the situation? Because let's face it, as unlikely as it seems to us, our story is rarely the only plausible story. And 3, how might I be impacting them? It's really hard to know how other people are actually experiencing us. So we could be curious about that. You can consider these questions by yourself, with a friend, a coach, or mentor, even putting them into AI. It's amazing. But now I want to invite you back to your scenario. Remember the one where you felt anything but curious towards someone? What story did your brain construct about that situation? What fragment of information was your story built on? Now consider one of these sparks. What might I be missing? How else might someone interpret the situation? How might I be impacting them? Can you feel the grip of your certainty loosen up a little bit? Do you feel any more openness? Before you answer that, I want to share one last spark with you. This is the mother of all curiosity sparks. It's the one I really want to offer you. What can I learn from this person? If you find yourself in the heat of the moment, feeling righteous, feeling judgy, try asking yourself, what can I learn from this person? The question reminds us that we can learn something from everyone. But even more, it reorients our role in the interaction. It literally changes what we notice. The question forces us to search for something new or different or unexpected. But the best part, I think, is it liberates us. It liberates us from having to fix or change or convince the other person, because for now, our only job is to find out something we didn't yet know. Which brings us back to that Uber ride. After returning a few emails, I realized something. How often do I get to talk to someone with such a different worldview? This could actually be interesting. But what if he launches into a tirade? Why should I give him that airtime? On the other hand, we only have 30 minutes left in this ride, so I'll probably never see him again. Then again, this could be the longest 30 minutes of my life. Welcome to my brain on curiosity. I decided to dip my toe in, just to see how it felt. So I started safe. Hey, how's your day been going so far? He said, oh, not too bad. What about you? His voice was more soft-spoken than I expected, and he sounded sincere. So we made some small talk. I was feeling pretty safe, and I sensed he was too, so I went for it. Hey, I noticed your hat. Are you affiliated with the police? He said, yeah, I used to be a cop, but for now I'm driving Uber. Cop to Uber driver. Huh? I hadn't heard that one before. Now my curiosity was piqued. So I said, that's interesting. What led to the switch? And notice what I didn't say. I didn't say, hey, are you aware that flag could be hurtful to some people? Or wouldn't you want to avoid offending your customers? I didn't ask anything that would be designed to change him or play gotcha. I asked a question for just one purpose, to learn more. And I think he could tell my interest in him was genuine. He described some pretty awful violence he'd endured on duty, and threats so severe that he had to step away from the job for his family's safety, and the gang murder of his relative who was in police training. I couldn't imagine going through any of this, let alone subjecting my family to it. Then he started talking about his commitment to the dignity of people he arrested. The dignity of people he arrested, like offering them a final cigarette before they got booked. And it turns out he had done a lot to build relationships with community members, especially people afraid of law enforcement. So I probed a little deeper. What about any racism within the police? He said he was in favor of anti-bias training, as long as the quality was good. And then I asked him what he thought about calls to defund the police. And he calmly explained that he gets why people want that. But he also said people sometimes take their safety for granted. And he wondered, who would they want to call if their house got broken into? It's a fair question. It turns out this guy was not the extremist or the racist I'd initially feared. Far from it. Here was someone who had sacrificed so much to protect other people. And his views were more nuanced than I expected. Far more than my own, in fact. Now, I want to be clear. Choosing curiosity is just that. It's a choice. It's not an obligation. Sometimes the right decision might be to disengage, because expressing curiosity does carry risks, emotional risks, sometimes physical risks. What matters is making the choice for yourself and not letting those automatic reactions or cultural conditioning do it for you. And when you consider the pros and cons, think about this. Choosing curiosity not only helps you learn more from other people, it also makes them more open to learning from you. curiosity begets curiosity, which is a good thing because ideally learning is a two-way street. Multiple studies have shown that when you express curiosity towards other people, they are more willing to hear you out. And when they do, they not only see you as more intelligent, more likable, more objective, but they actually find your views more persuasive too. But the benefits don't stop with you. Did you know the Latin root of the word curious means to care? When you're genuinely curious about other people, they can tell you care about them. How many people are just waiting to share something about their life experiences, their struggles, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their ideas, if only someone would express a little more curiosity towards them? I'm actually one of those people, way more often than you might even imagine. When we got to the airport, I said a heartfelt thank you to my driver. His story had opened my mind. I discovered that we shared beliefs in dignity, in service, in community. But I also got the gift of feeling closer to another person. And from the warmth of his thank you to me, I sensed that he did too. And our conversation didn't make me start flying his flag. And if I'm honest, whenever I see symbols like that, I still have a visceral reaction. But ever since that ride, I also want to find out a little more about the story and the person behind the symbols. And I can't be sure, but I suspect that any stories he might have been holding about people like me might have also loosened up just a little bit. We're at a fragile moment in history. The challenges we face, from climate to health to democracy to education, require our collective wisdom. That means we're going to have to get better and better at learning from each other. This is not a nice to have. I truly believe this is our only hope. But more and more these days, people on one side of an issue look at the other side as enemies. What if more of us chose curiosity more often? Let's try to imagine a world beyond fight or flight, where our collective default might become, let's find out more. Yes, it takes some work to inject those question marks into our stories, but when we do, we just might discover something interesting or someone important to learn about. When you choose curiosity, when you ask yourself, what can I learn from this person? I believe you're giving the greatest possible gift to yourself, to others, and yes, to humanity. Thank you.